Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Champions for Earth vidcast. I'm joined today with Damian Hall, who's an ultra runner, a really fantastic champion for Earth, an example of someone, running their talk, if you want to say that. Someone who's been very brave and outspoken, and really looking forward to just learning a bit more about you, Damian, finding out about your sport, finding out about your campaigning and your activism and the reasons behind all that. So thank you for joining us here today. And I guess my first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about ultra running and what it's all about, what draws you to it? And, what is it like being an ultra runner? Because from what I've heard, it makes my eyes water just thinking about it.
Well, firstly, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. And thanks for all the amazing work you do in this area and for inspiring so many of us. Ultra running, yeah, it can be anything over the marathon distance. So it really varies a lot from maybe a 50K trail race or a 50-mile, hilly race in Britain, to the more exotic races like sort of the Marathon des Sables in Morocco, which is kind of a multi-stage race which takes place over several days. 100-mile races are very popular, and that's one of my favorite things, and ideally somewhere lumpy in the mountains.
Okay.
There's a lot of those in Europe and America. And then even we go beyond that distance, and I've got quite into 200-milers as well, such as the Spine Race in Britain, or in September I'm going to do the Tour de Gien again in the Italian Alps, which takes kind of 3 or 4 days, and including going through the nights. And then the craziest one in the world is possibly, which I have no aspirations to do, is called the Self Transcendence 3,100-mile race, which goes around the same block in New York for about 6 weeks. So I don't have aspirations to do that one, but I really like 100 or 200 miles in mountains is my favorite thing.
And what is your training like for that? I mean, I can imagine it involves lots of running, but how much running are we talking about?
Well, I think people might imagine we have to do loads more than, say, a marathon runner, but actually, all my training's on Strava. I probably average the same as a sort of serious recreational marathon runner, which is kind of around maybe 70 miles a week. Yes, some weeks will be bigger leading up to the race, but that probably means running, one rest day, running 6 days a week, but sometimes 7 or 8 times. Some strength training on top of that. And I'm I suppose I'd call myself like semi-professional. I've got a little bit of funding behind me, but I've got a family to support, so most of that is through coaching other runners. So I'm not like a full-time athlete where I can just go for a run, go back to bed, go for another run, stuff my face and sort of lie down again. But our sport is it's booming, it's getting more and more professional, but there's very little, say, prize money, and there are only very few sort of full-time professional athletes, which is good for me, because then I got more chance of trying to keep up with them.
So I could talk about this forever. I'm fascinated because I've often heard this little voice. There's a race in canoeing called the Devizes to Westminster race, which is 125 miles, and I can't imagine. I can imagine it being just horrendously brutal, and I just know I don't want to do it. But I can imagine one day a little voice inside my head will say, now it's the time to go and do it, and I don't want to hear that voice. And I'm kind of imagining you're talking about this this ridiculous thing. I don't know if you'll ever manage to do it, but I think it's surely the challenge of these ultra marathons is almost entirely kind of psychological. I'm guessing physically it must be challenging, but surely if you're dead set on it, it's possible, right?
Yes, I mean, one of the cliches in our sport is kind of like, for 100 miles, say we run the first 50 miles with our legs and the second 50 miles with our head. And it's so true that if you want to go on, like if you're motivated to go on, then that's what will take you on. I mean, the very longest run I've done is 630 miles, which was setting a record at the time on the Southwest Coast Path. This lovely coastal path that goes, sort of Dorset, Devon, Cornwall and back. And that was, kind of 11 days of, I was stopping to sleep at night, but not for very long. And I just learned, as long as I was motivated, as long as I wanted to, I'd keep going. I mean, there is another little sort of, it's not a secret, but another aspect of our sport is we do power hike, especially when it gets steep. I mean, if you're out for 24 hours in the mountains, trying to run something like that is just foolish, really. So it's power hiking, but that becomes part of our skill set. And the people who can power hike the best, the quickest, will probably be doing the best.
So power hiking just means walking up hills really hard.
No, we call it power hiking, Etienne, because that's much more athletic than.
No. But it's like seriously.
Yeah. But I prefer, if I call walking, that almost sounds like I can have a nice break and get the thermos out and get a book out. So I always try power hiking, to try and sort of keep myself in that competitive mindset. But yeah, it's part of the sport. It's not quite race walking, but it's that's an element. But that gives your body a bit of a rest in some respects, or certain muscles a rest, so that you can sort of, when you get to the top of the mountain, you can run again.
Because I hate running downhill worse than I hate anything. And
oh, really?
I just think that must be obviously a really important part of what you're doing as well. That kind of brutal, like banging away, running down, and trying to like skip and fly down rather than stamp and crush the rocks on your way down, which is what I do.
Yeah, it's quite an intriguing. The sort of element of the sport I like to do is there's almost 4 movement patterns, and that's kind of flat running, uphill hiking, power hiking, and downhill running. So there's almost 4 things. So you often find people are really good at one thing, and then one of them's a weakness, and then they might be average at the other 2 or something like that. So it's quite interesting. And people usually are divided on whether they love a downhill or an uphill. I've learned to love downhills, and I mean, it should be less energy expended on a downhill. Gravity's on your side, but that's when you trash your muscles and perhaps go flying if you trip up.
Oh man! And just for context, we're recording this at the back end of July, and you recently just did a race. And before we started recording, you said it's 175 kilometers, if I'm correct. Can you just describe a little bit about that race and what it was like? Because I can expect, it was very, very hard, but it seems like you've weathered it quite well, and you sound very philosophical about it.
Well, this is why I look like I'm 70 when actually I'm only 14. It was 30 hours out in the mountains. It was called the Savinio Matterhorn Ultra Race. It's a pretty new race. It's a 100-mile loop from a little Italian village called Savinio. Big loop of the Matterhorn into Switzerland all the way back round. 12,000 meters of sort of uphill. And I placed 6th, which is okay. Really, it's a training race. I would have liked to do a bit better. But yeah, it was just wonderful. Like, you start in the morning and I mean, one of my favorite things is running through the night. And if the weather's okay-ish, you're up in the mountains in the stars, and it's all quiet and there's nature around. I saw this massive, I think you call it a chamois, these massive mountain goats that just sort of leapt off the mountain ahead of me. It didn't seem like a sort of, like it was running away from me. It almost seemed like a show of strength, like it was trying to show me it was the boss. It was an amazing moment. And then
you're in my town.
It was like that. Yeah, that was and it was twice the size of me. And then as dawn broke, I was running straight towards the Matterhorn. Like, that's all I could see out the mist ahead of me. So you get these. I mean, so a lot of it is about being in nature and these beautiful places. There are some road 100-milers and things, and I'm not saying I'd never do them, but they're not nearly as exciting to me. It ends up being just a nice adventure, fitting roughly 24 hours maybe if you're doing a 100-miler. And I've been doing them a few years, and they're brilliant.
And what brought you into this line of sport? Did you have an athletic background before? Did you do other sports beforehand, or have you always been more or less a runner?
Well, at school I always wanted to play football, but I was a bit rubbish. I was usually like sub for the school team, so that was sort of my level. I remember being in a cup final actually, and we were losing, and the manager didn't bring me on. So that I mean, we're talking at age 12, 13, but yeah, so that was kind of my level. So I always wanted to be good at football. Everyone played football. But when I did do some cross country races, I did do okay. And I remember my first ever one in the school, I was sort of top 10 almost by accident. So I just had this natural fitness, possibly from living up a hill in the Cotswolds and, doing paper rounds and milk rounds. And every time I had to go and visit a friend, it'd be up and down a hill, So I had this fitness, but running, and then I did win some cross country races at sort of sixth form level, but running wasn't really cool, and there wasn't any culture around it. I didn't know of any clubs or anything, so I just sort of almost forgot all about it. And then it wasn't till, and I carried on being, I suppose, playing football recreational to a very low standard, and but I love trekking as well, multi-day walks, and I've done a lot of mountain treks, a little bit of mountaineering. And then it wasn't until 2011, I'd moved back to Britain after a long time abroad, and I did the Bath Half almost on a whim and just loved it. I loved the sort of training and the sense of mission and the event itself, and just thought I want to do more of this. And the next year I was doing my first marathon, dressed as a toilet. And then a magazine, I was a journalist, a magazine sent me to do my first ultra marathon that year, actually. But I had a much stronger feeling on the finish line of, this is my thing. Like, it was out in the hills, it was longer, there's more camaraderie. The aid stations were great. Lots of cake. And I just straight away thought, I want to try more of these. This is great. And yeah, the next year I was doing 100K, 100 miles, the Spine race. And actually 4 years after my first ultra marathon, I was selected for the GB team, for the sort of the trail running world championships. So I'd really got into it. I got quite carried away. But also by then I was 40. So I was kind of, I think I had this sense of trying to make up for lost time. I think I'd found something that I loved a little bit late. So I was quite serious. I always had a coach. I almost pretty much gave up social life, or maybe everyone just found me really boring going on about running all the time and they gave me up. I don't know, but so it's been life-changing, rewarding journey. It's ended up being sort of my work's changed, I suppose my body's changed quite a lot. I've brought out books from it, been in films. It's been amazing, really, just the simple thing of running, how much it can give us, I think.
Do you enjoy, say that again, sorry.
Running at all, Etienne?
I'm a runner. I have a sort of obsession about 10 kilometers, but I don't train at all for it. I just like to think that one day I might go underneath 40 minutes for 10 kilometers, but I don't think it's ever going to be possible, basically, because I don't go running enough, simply. And also, I'm not sure physically. Well, I've never seen myself running, but if ever you did, you probably realised it might be biomechanically impossible for me to hit the 40-minute mark. Anyway. It sounds so nice to hear you saying, Damian, like your eyes and your passion for this is wonderful. And I guess brings me into my next question, which is about green runners, because this is something you're, a key part of. And I guess you can also, if you want to, at this point, talk about how you came into kind of twining environmental action or environmental understandings in with your running. And I guess their kind of expression of that is green runners, as far as I can tell, but please, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think it was 2019 when partly a couple of things happened. There was another GB athlete called Dan Lawson, GB trail running athlete, ultra running athlete, and his partner Charlotte, and they'd formed a little, I don't think technically they're a charity, but it formed a little group called Rerun Clothing. And they were worried about the amount of excess equipment and kit that sponsored athletes were getting, because he was a sponsored athlete and he just was getting bombarded with kit that he didn't need. And they started sort of trying to share that kit around, make sure it got used. But then what happened was they got bombarded with race t-shirts. So in running, like almost every race you do, you're given a free t-shirt at the end, which at the beginning feels like, oh, okay, nice, a t-shirt to run in.
There's only so much painting and decorating you can do, right? With them. You have to like use a new one each wall you do.
Yes, no, exactly. And most of us, after running a few years, we have a drawer full of these t-shirts, and often they're quite ugly and not that great material, and they have an environmental cost when they're made, which is surprisingly bad, especially when you include the dyes. And also, I mean, I've looked into this a lot now because I ended up doing a book on this, but like there's, in cotton, for example, there's still child labor and slave labor and the pesticides used. And, it's horrendous. The water usage is horrendous. And so they sounded the alarm bit in running. Before that, I'd kind of thought, well, running's quite an innocent thing. You don't need much kit, and all you need is a pair of shoes to go running. But then they were also started looking into the shoes, and we're all all these brands tell us, firstly, they're making loads and loads of shoes, just incredible amounts. In fact, the global sort of trainer industry is estimated to have a footprint the same as the UK.
Wow.
Which is just incredible. But when you think about companies like Nike, for example, are just producing, they're one of the biggest companies in the whole world, and they're just producing endlessly. And then they're telling us we have to throw our shoes away after 300 to 500 miles because they might injure us. And I've looked into this a lot as well, and I can't find any study that proves that. So there's this massive overconsumption of shoes, t-shirts and shoes. And suddenly it was those two that really sounded the alarm, and you realize, oh, well, our running can do some harm. And around that same time was when I started to see, Extinction Rebellion as well in doing their amazing protests in London. And it really caught, I think, a lot of people's imaginations. I can still remember, especially that pink boat, and just blocking off the bridges, but also how thoughtful, how well organized it all was, how, the costumes, the songs, and the powerful messages. You could tell there was a lot of planning gone into this, and people really were worried. And before then, I guess I was concerned, but not actively concerned. Like a lot of people, you kind of think, well, something's going on, but it doesn't really affect us. And then I realized, you start looking into things more and realizing, well, no, this is much more urgent than the media are saying, and than the governments are doing anything about. And I guess I started thinking, well, my running is part of the problem, thanks to Dan and Charlotte. And at the time, I suppose I'd probably fly 3 times a year and post about my new kit on Instagram. And so I started analyzing how could I be a better athlete environmentally, but where were the big problems in running? And around the same time, I brought one book out, and the publisher had said, why don't you do a second book on this, on sort of running and the environment? Like, how bad is it? What can people do? And that was, quite a depressing journey, looking at especially the sportswear stuff, and the greenwashing, all these brands pretending to be green, but actually just making more and more and saying, hey, we'll buy a new eco version. And that was, and then it was depressing because you realized you had been part of it as well, especially as a sponsored athlete as well, sort of saying, hey,
the poster people for it, right?
Yeah. So that aside, almost a bit of shame in that, and thinking, oh, well, I've been part of this overconsumption cycle, so you get some guilt on that. And then, so I guess around that time, and the same dilemma we always have of like, sort of, how much do you improve your own individual sort of footprint versus pushing for system change? And I think it's inevitable that anyone who starts caring about this looks at their own footprint. And I suppose, I turned full annoying vegan. I didn't fly for 3 years. And then I guess with kit, I'm still sponsored at the moment. I've got some good friends who've given up sponsorship. It's something I sort of evaluate all the time. But I've definitely changed what I'm willing to do, I suppose, change my role, and hopefully have had some impact with the brands I work with. But none of that is, to me, as satisfying or worthwhile as the sort of nudging for system change stuff. And that's stuff like, I suppose, stuff like the Green Runners, and maybe bring the book out, being involved with you guys. And it is a great relief, because you probably will have found this. You can feel quite lonely and quite frightened out there, and especially if you're in sport and you start speaking out, and of course people start calling you a hypocrite. And you kind of, it's really reassuring to find other sports people who can, I suppose, be supportive in both an emotional and in a sort of practical way as well, with information or so there are a few little groups around like that. But it just don't know. I think, like a lot of people, I just need to be able to tell my kids I tried, really. Like, looking back, in 20 years, they're going to say, what were you lot doing? Like, why didn't you do something? And I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, I did try. I did enough. I don't know, but No,
well, that's an interesting thing, so we, I believe we are connected certainly by this idea that sport has this power. Not everybody can use the power of sport because they're not necessarily deeply involved in sports, but we think that, we've got some of that power, right, as athletes or current athletes and former athletes. So what do you see is the power of sport in this, this moment in history? And we have to be really honest about it. This is a historic moment. It will be seen as a critical period of years. It may span some decades, particularly these years right now, where the awareness has arguably approaching a peak amount of awareness, to a degree of awareness of this problem. What do you see as sports kind of role in this time, and what, and I guess it's connected to what you're doing now as well?
I mean, I think at first I didn't really grasp how critical, how sport could be almost the biggest thing, because firstly, we can see climate breakdown in our sport really clearly. For example, the Italian Grand Prix was called off earlier this year because it was flooded. In running, we're seeing races cancelled. From extreme weather, for example. Races. Sebastian Coe himself, in an unguarded comment recently, even said, "We don't know if there'll be marathons at future Olympics." And the most recent Olympics, the marathon wasn't held in the host city because it would have been too hot. So, lots of examples with air pollution in cricket, I believe, and we had those most recent Olympics, athletes left venues in wheelchairs because of the heat exhaustion and things like that. So it's impacting sport now. So even if people aren't that interested or knowledgeable about climate breakdown, they're watching a sport and think their sport will be affected. Rock climbing is another. Well, mountaineering, we're seeing it a lot, and skiing, skimo. Nearly every sport, as far as I'm concerned, is being affected in some way right now. So firstly, you've got that massive audience focusing on the sport, but it's being affected by climate breakdown. Then there was this research that I was shown, that I'm sure you've heard of, which showed that sports people are the most influential people of our time, which was both terrifying and I suppose empowering too. And we can see, even when Gary Lineker tweets about this stuff, when Lewis Hamilton says things, we can see the huge power that has, and that they're massively influential. So there's two things there. I think we're seeing it in front of us, but sport could also, of course, make significant changes that again would be headlines, and could lead the way. So yeah, I think sport's right at the forefront. It might even be potentially the crucial sort of arena where things turn around. I mean, maybe I'm getting a bit overexcited and carry away, but to me, it's absolutely huge.
Yeah, why not, eh? And nations have changed. There's been international fallings out and reconciliations through sport. I think it's really worth, really worth talking about. I thought it was, crazy recently with the Ashes. The prime ministers were getting involved in this. And it's like, really, we've got there's things to be talked about. Anyway, so this is really interesting, and there's another thing that I know that I'm really impressed with, which is this Into Ultra project that you are kind of championing. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but that you've brought up here, and I think it's really cool to explain, because I think that would give people a little bit of a sense of kind of what you see, your ethos kind of behind running and behind ultra running, that sits slightly, I don't know, maybe above or wider or underneath, whichever way you want it, something more than just running, right? So go on, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was very lucky. Not so long ago, someone approached me. I didn't know him well, but he said he had like a fund available to do some good in running. And we sort of debated what that would look like. And I mean, there are already some people doing some good things on inclusivity. We already had the green runners up and going and having some effect. So we decided to form something new, which is kind of Into Ultra, which is really trying to just remove some financial barriers, because with the races, entries can be quite expensive, and the kit, often there's quite a lot of kit in our races, because you might be out in the mountains in the night and in the weather, and that could be a barrier to people. Well, it is a barrier to people. I mean, really, we're motivated by, I suppose, making ultra running more diverse, getting more ages. And yeah, so far it's been really well supported. So that's just been a really lovely thing to be involved in, which only has positives, and seems to be really effective. We have 70 or 80 sort of brands and partners wanting to be involved. we've got 20 people so far that we're sort of supporting. But yeah, it's really, really rewarding work. And I would just say, yeah, if anyone thinks they might be, what's the word? It might be for them, drop us a line into ultra.org.uk, I think it is. And yeah, we'll look if we can support you and support people. So and there is still a green ethos. And this actually comes from the other guy. We won't support people to races that they have to fly to. And with the kit, actually, we'll try and get people, brand new shoes. But some of the other kit may be sort of repurposed secondhand, but good kit. We're not giving people stuff with holes in. But there are several great organisations out there, such as, say, the Reaction Collective, who are sort of constantly repairing kit so that it keeps getting used. So yeah, there's a green ethos to it as well. But yeah, it's been exciting so far.
That sounds really good. And I like, I guess this is one of the things that, we're working on really is, for people to express their values in their action, and this is what Champions for Earth is about, trying to, with the humbleness of your understanding, prepared to be challenged, saying, actually, this is what I believe can be done, showing what can be done, and kind of taking this leadership position. And that is really, really clear. And it's really nice to hear. And I just thought, just to come back to something about green runners, there's like these four kind of elements of green runners, kind of I don't know what it would be, the kind of ethos of it or something.
Our pillars, yes.
So can you go through them? Have you got them available to you? I mean, I guess shouldn't put you on the spot there, but I really like the idea of these elements, that kind of, it's a kind of a membership, and it's a kind of a very conscious choice to be involved. And I really like the idea of that as well.
Yeah, thank you. There were probably about 10 or 12 of us sort of founding members, and we debated, what does it mean, or who can join the Green Runners. And really, we have four pillars, and it's how you move, so your travel, how you fuel, how you kit up, and how you speak up. So all we ask people is that they make a pledge to improve at least on at least one of those. They might think they can improve all four. They might already be, vegan or not fly at all or something. But it's just your own pledge on improvement. So we don't want to. We were quite clear. We didn't want to say, right, to be a green runner, you have to be vegan, can't fly, can't have any new shoes, because we end up with just 20 eco zealots, I suppose. So we want it to be accessible. We just want people to, think about improving. But to me, actually, the key one is speaking up. So that, to me, that's more nudging for system change. That might be directly to brands. It might be at your local running club or race. It might be amongst friends. It's kind of up to you to pick it what suits you best, really. And yeah, we've been blown away. I think any day now we'll get to 1,000 members, and we're only just over a year old, and there's quite a few around the globe as well. So we've been really very thrilled, really, with how many people have gone, yes, we want to be involved. And then it's almost like, where do we go? I suppose, where do we go next? How can we sort of galvanize that feeling, that community feeling? And one of the great things was, and you were involved very much yourself, Etienne, thank you for that, was like this climate relay, which it wasn't our thing. It was a separate organization, but we sort of worked together. And I feel like that was really powerful, because yeah, you can feel quite powerless when you're in this sort of climate emergency, especially with the size of the corporations involved who are not doing the right thing. But when you can actually just run or kayak, canoe, when you can actually or cycle, when you can actually just exercise, and that being some form of protest, some form of speaking out, that's pretty powerful, I think, and really feels, I don't know, that feels a lot better than the sort of helplessness we can feel sometimes. So yeah, there are definitely plans for more of that type of thing. And I think that worked really well. It got a lot of coverage on ITV and BBC, actually. So yeah, that worked well.
So it's interesting to ask you. I know the organization that governs podcasts and video things like this is probably going to write to me. There's no such thing, I don't think, but I'm skipping back all over the place, as I'm about to say, but I don't care, because I think it's interesting. What I want to just go back to and ask is, was there a kind of penny dropping moment, a red pill moment for you? Has this been a journey into, because I know that you are fierce, you're fiercely passionate about this, and you've been outspoken. I am just going to mention here something that I was greatly impressed with is when you unfurled the Just Stop Oil flag at the end of your spine race, which I thought was really incredible. And we're in a context now, whenever people are going to be watching this, that Just Stop Oil is a very very controversial, very provocative movement, and being saying you support it, even doing that is quite brave. So you obviously feel strongly enough to kind of put yourself out there and say, this is what I'm standing with your flag planted. And that takes some courage, and it takes some serious foundation. And I guess the foundation for many people comes from this sense. And I'm wondering where that sense came from, that this is what you need to do now. And, I know for lots of people, I'm guessing it's to do with outdoors and being in these wonderful places that you've had to get to see, and the vulnerability of some of those places. But it is different, and some people know it and some people don't. It'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are, how you came to be basically an environmental campaigner and activist, if you see yourself in that way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, really. I think it probably was those two things in 2019, of both listening to Dan and Charlotte at Rerun Clothing on a podcast. And I remember them talking about the T-shirt waste and kind of thinking, oh, well, running is part of it. And then around that time, seeing the Extinction Rebellion protests. So it's definitely 2019.
It was underneath, but at that point, it was kind of an underlying unease that you kind of noticed it. You weren't comfortable with it, but you didn't know what to do, or it hadn't really kind of brought you to the level.
Yes, yeah, I think so. And the funny thing was, both me and Dan, I know Dan a little bit, but we were both at the same protests actually, but without knowing each other were. And it was actually Charlotte, his wife, messaged me and said, oh, Dan was there. And actually we started a little WhatsApp group from there. And that was the start of the Green Runners, even though the Green Runners didn't happen for another 2 or 3 years. But nowadays, honestly, I think I'm driven by sort of, possibly, this isn't going to sound very healthy, but probably fear and anxiety of the urgency. And to me, holding up a Just Stop Oil flag is the least I could be doing. And it's a lot less than you've done far more for the cause than I have. But I'm just that fear of, can I look my children in the eye really in 20 years and say I did all I could? Really, that's the most powerful thing in the world, I think, letting your children down, or letting your friends or family down. And I'm not, that doesn't mean to sound like I'm pointing fingers around, but for me, it's the most important thing in the world is to try and turn the situation around, so that people after us have a livable planet. And so, I'm going to carry on doing things like that. It was great fun. I can't reveal too much, but it was great fun on that race. I think they had some, I doubt they'll watch this, but they definitely had some nervousness and some guesses about what I might do. And I am going back next January, so maybe I shouldn't give away too much. But I think those moments, and before that, every time I sort of set a record or did well at a race, I was holding up. I've got this Extinction Rebellion flag that my children painted for me. My hunch is maybe it wasn't clear enough. People didn't it's a lovely flag and it's nice and colourful, but you can't. But the Just Stop All thing is just so much more sort of direct. So those moments, that's when you might get our sport's very niche, but that's when you might get a bit more media attention. So for me, finish lines, or if things go well, that's how I can use my personal role in the sport to get some attention, put the pressure on.
No, I mean, it's really, really important to hear that. And if these are things, this is challenging times. And I got kind of 2 questions next. Is, first of all, interesting to hear, about your talk about being a hypocrite. This is one thing we know in Champions Earth. We just come across over and over and over again. And this word, this kind of idea is used to silence almost everybody about environmental issues, because we are all hypocritical to some degree. It's very difficult to not be a hypocrite, to be somehow not complicit in what's going on. So it'd be interesting to hear you talk about that. And I'll ask you about that first of all, then I'll ask my second question so it doesn't confuse you.
Well, I mean, there was a bit of research, I think, from eco athletes in America saying, why don't athletes speak out? And then there were three things. One was fear of being called a hypocrite. The other two were, I think, too sciencey or too political.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, the first time I did speak out on social media and kind of saying, hold on, why aren't the government and corporations doing anything about this? People did say, oh, but you flew to a race, but you did that, and some of that criticism was fair and some of it wasn't, to be honest. So it did make me think more about my own footprint. And yeah, we'll all have a footprint. We can probably all improve our footprints. For me, I've done the 4 or 5 big obvious things I can do. And then, but if everyone just stays quiet because, oh, look, I did a car journey last week, no one speaks up and nothing happens, so we've got to move on. Everyone will be a hypocrite. In fact, there's a line from Jonathan Pye, the comedian. I'm not a huge fan, but he's got some great stuff on this. And he kind of says, I'd rather be a hypocrite than an arsehole. And it's kind of like, it kind of is that simple to me. And usually it's, well, online, I mean, we know there are bots around or people paid to just, be on certain sides. And so nowadays, I'm not, I don't give them too much attention. You can tell, I mean, some people have intelligent questions and you can get intelligent debates and we may have some aspects of this wrong, but I feel absolutely 100% sure I'm on the right side of history, and I'm going to carry on, and I might make mistakes, but it's just too urgent and too important not to try. And I feel like we've got to take the power out of the word hypocrite, because if it's holding sports back, it's holding sports people back. That's why I admire people like Lewis Hamilton and Gary Lineker, because they have the courage. They've gone beyond that, and it doesn't hurt them. And if you embrace that word as well, I do have it in some of my social media bios as a climate hypocrite. It doesn't mean, hey, I can just fly around the world whenever I like because I'm a climate hypocrite and it's fine. But it means that that word doesn't have much power on me, because I know to an extent I am, but I'm less of a hypocrite than a lot of people. And well, it's up to people watching this to decide whether I'm an arsehole or not. But I'm maybe more of a hypocrite than an arsehole.
Wow. And, quick shout out to one of our other videos recordings, which will be the session with Donica McCarthy, which was all about the media's role in this. And he talked a little bit about, being a credible messenger and how you can do that, but also, just facing down and owning and actually noting, drawing attention to this dynamic where, it's all about who's talking rather than the issues that are being talked about. And I think there's a whole thing there. I wanted just to come back, and maybe we're kind of coming towards the end of our time here, but you alluded to this a little bit earlier. It is tough out there, right? To watch the news with, just as we're recording this, there's the headlines as being, the 7 hottest days in the last 100,000 years on Earth. There's a very, very dire political situation here in the UK where it seems like neither of the major parties are actually willing to tell the truth. The systems of political power, the corporations, record profits, sport wash, green wash. It is brutal if your eyes are open to that. And, you say you're talking about anxiety and fear. I think these are important emotions to open ourselves to. And, we are living here. And I think, this is like, you don't get to choose, for example, where you are in the world. There's people living in constant fear and mortal fear of their lives. And we are here now, but I'm wondering, what do you do to stay healthy and to stay in the game? Because as an athlete, you have this sense and an ability about how you look after yourself to sustain the efforts that you're doing in your sport, and sustaining our efforts as campaigners is a really important thing to do as well. And what do you do to kind of, they could be physical, mental, we've been starting to talk about spiritual with a small s, what do you do to look after yourself in this time? How do you keep going? Because it is hard, and we got to, the harder it is, the more the harder it is, and the harder it is, we got to try. Over to you.
Yeah, I sometimes don't know if I'm managing all that well. I guess firstly, I don't know if you find the same in your sport, but going for a run is wonderfully meditative, especially as most of my runs I'd rather be on trails and in woods and hills. So time in nature, I suppose exercising is wonderful. I suppose time with my kids as well. Those are probably the two things I do that, yeah, will always bring me great happiness, I think. But I must admit, nearly every day when I wake up, and I could do better here, but yeah, I go on Twitter too early and I retweet or tweet 2 or 3 doom mongering climate stories. But that actually, I find that helps me. I'm almost.
Is it doom mongering? No, that's the thing. I'm like, because it's just, this is the reality. It's like, I don't want to sound, I don't think it's a flippant comparison. If you're living in the Ukraine or if you're living in the Horn of Africa, you're staring down the barrel of a gun, maybe literally, or maybe, it is fear, but fear is going to drive, it's going to create energy. It can of course, disempower people, and you can be rooted to the ground through fear. This is, of course, must be the case, but also it creates energy, and action can flow from fear. And action does not necessarily flow from, everything's going to be fine, it's comfortable. That's not, human beings don't really work like that in lots of cases, I would say. And it sounds to me like, well, you're turning this into action. That's all we can do, right?
Yeah, and probably the other thing I do, I suppose, is being involved with the Green Runners. I suppose we have regular meetings, plans, and engaging. And I believe this is one of those sort of verified ways to cope with eco anxiety, is sort of engaging with it and doing, even if it's small things, feeling like you're doing something productive. So work with the Green Runners is a great help, and often even it might not even be the practical stuff that you're doing, but just sharing time with people who share your concerns is actually really nice. So I guess those are the things. Those are the things I do. Yeah.
That sounds fair enough. And, that's what Champions for Earth is about, Green Runners, a sense of community, supporting each other, a sense of action, a sense of, being with people who care is a really good thing. So I just want to, my final question is, if you would be kind enough to say, what is your kind of, or one of your, if you've got, one of your proudest moments in this space of being a runner, an activist, a campaigner, an environmental earth protector, ultra demo, what makes you, what have you been proud of that you could say, I done good there?
I mean, I'm thrilled with how the Green Runners has taken off, although a lot of it isn't my work. There's a lot of people behind the scenes doing actual work. I just talk about it and tweet about it. It might actually be, now I think of it, it might be the end of the Spine race when I managed to just about have enough sort of energy left to get the flag out as planned. They did try and distract me from that, but yeah, when I can combine the two, that feels really powerful. And when one of the things I think about on these especially long races, running for the night on your own, you get very tired. What's motivating you? Yeah, I often think of my kids, or our climate and ecological emergency, and what can I do about it, so that when I get to the finish line, that is what's motivating me. So yeah, that was a lovely moment where athletically, I'd won the race, I'd done all I could, and then I was able to link it to wider worries. Although I must say, I was interviewed, maybe I'm saying too much, but I was interviewed live on BBC Breakfast the next morning, and I was explicitly told beforehand, could we keep to race? Could we keep things to the race, please? And at the time, because I was very tired, I did go along with that, but I don't know if I could have done more there or not, but one to think about for next time, maybe.
Well, Damian, I've got to say that's a lovely place to end it there. I'm very proud to know you. Getting to know you here has been really lovely. I hope the audience are watching this whenever they do have enjoyed it too. We could talk for hours. I'd love to know more about all these different things. But I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing with the Green Runners. Thank you for being part of Champions for Earth. Thank you for all you've done. And yeah, let's keep pushing it on. And we're champions in this time. Let's keep pushing till we win, or till we get towards where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Etienne. Thanks so much.